Begin the Gemara today on Daf Yutes Samud Aleph at the top of the Yamid Omalei Abaya. So Abaya here is responding or asking a question on Rab Zera. We had a Mishnah. The Mishnah said the rule is Stam Nedarim Lahachmer. Anytime a person says a lashon of a neder and if it's not clear if it was going to be a good neder, it takes effect or not. So we're going to be machmer. The neder takes effect. Then the Gemara brought another Mishnah where regarding Nazirus, which is a kind of neder, it says Stam Nazirus or Safik Nazirus is lahakal. If it's a Safik, if the Nazirus took effect, we're lenient about it. What's the difference? So Rab Zera is... What again?
Stam and a Safik?
Stam and Safik are not exactly the same thing, but it's similar. Stam is when we're not sure what his kavanah was. Safik is not necessarily when we're not sure what his kavanah was, but when he said something and it's not clear if it got fulfilled later, if he says this person that comes across me is a nazir, and then you don't know who that person was, Safik. Safik is a little bit different than Stam. But the Gemara asks a contradiction. The Gemara says, if Stam Nedarim is lahachmer, why Safik Naziris is lahakal? So Rab Zera answers that it's a machlokes. What's the machlokes? Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon. Where do we see Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon argue about a case of a Safik or a Stam regarding a person that was makdish a koi? No, sorry, again, he wasn't makdish a koi. Regarding a person that was makdish all his chayis or all his behemoths. And not as a Safik, whether the koi is included in that, because we don't know if the koi is a chay or a behemoth. So the Chachamim say that the hektish takes effect. Even though it's a Safik, it takes effect. And Rabbi Eliezer says the hektish does not take effect. So we see over here, machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim regarding a case where it's a Safik, if the neder he made to be makdish takes effect or not. And the Gemara says the same machlokes applies regarding Stam Nedarim Lahachmer and Safik Naziris Lahakal. When it says in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Masechta Taris actually, when it says there, Safik Naziris Lahakal, that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, which says that you're going to be mekel. Okay, that was Rab Zera's teretz. Now, an important thing to point out regarding Rab Zera's teretz, which is going to be negated in the next part of the Gemara, which the Gemara explained before, that one of the chedushim of Rab Zera is, even though our Mishnah that talks about a Stam Neder, and the Mishnah that talks about Safik Naziris is talking about a Safik that pertains to the person himself, his body. Whether a neder that he made on himself, or issa for himself, should take effect, or naziris that he made for himself should take effect or not. The case of a person that's makdish a koi, that's not a issa that pertains to himself, to his body. That's a shaila, a suffix regarding an animal that he owns, regarding his mammon. Whether the issa, the neder, the hektish will take effect on his mammon. So who says we can compare a suffix regarding the naziris or nedarim, which is on the gof, to the suffix that there is regarding the mammon? So that was part of Rab Zera's chiddush, that we do compare them. If we say that when he said a lashon of a neder and it's a suffix, so that it takes effect, and he meant to include the suffix as well, so we say that when it's a suffix regarding his golf, regarding his mammon, and if not, then it doesn't take effect, not regarding a suffix on his golf, and not regarding a suffix regarding a behemoth, or the koi rather, whether it's a behemoth or a chaya. That's part of Rab Zera's chiddush. So okay, so now let's continue the Gemara inside. So Abaye asks Rab Zera, so you said now that Mishnah in Masechta Taris that says Safik Naziris Lahakal, who does it go according to? Rabbi Eliezer. That's Rabbi Eliezer. But what is the next case? What does it say afterwards there in the Mishnah? Safik B'chayris. If there's a Safik animal that's born, you don't know if it's a B'chayr or not. So let's say two animals all came out at once, twins, and one is a Zachar, one is a Nekeva, and you don't know which one came out first. So you don't know, only the Zachar would be a B'chayr, but you don't know if that Zachar came out, if it's actually a B'chayr or not. What's the halacha? So Echad B'chayr Yadam, V'echad B'chayr Behema, whether it's a B'chayr by a human being, whether B'chayr by a Behema, and Bein Tmeya, Bein Tahira, whether by a Behema Tmeya or Tahira. So the halacha is Hamaitzi Mechaveiroi Olavaraya, regarding the question of ownership. Whether the kohen takes this behema or you have to do pidna ben or not, that we say that monetary ownership, if there's any time of doubt, the Yisrael keeps it and the kohen, he doesn't get anything. Okay, but then the Tanya law, there's a brayse that says regarding this Mishnah, this is all regarding the monetary ownership. But regarding the Isser of this B'chayr, that is a suffix about, and here we're talking about this B'chayr behema, we treat it like hektish because there's a suffix about it. So we treat it like hektish, and therefore we say that it's also to share the wool and it's also to do work with it as like with something which is hektish. So what do we see over here? That we say that Safik B'chayris, we are machmer. We're going to say that we treat it like hektish. So the question is, how can you say, according to the Rabbi Eliezer, that he says in the beginning of the same Mishnah that when it comes to Naziris, so we're going to be mekel. So what's the Gemara's question over here? So the Ran explains, what the Gemara is asking is that without Rab Zera, I would say that the difference between Safik Naziris, why by Safik Naziris I'm mekel, and why by Safik B'chayris I'm machmer, is very simple. Minigea to Safik Naziris, it's a Safik on himself, it's a Safik on his guf. So maybe regarding a person's own guf, we're going to be lenient that the person probably did not mean to create this new Isser on himself. So over there I say that we're mekel. But over here when it comes to the behemoth, this is a Safik that pertains to a behemoth, to not to himself, but to a behemoth that he owns. Maybe over there we're going to be more machmer. That's if we were able to make this distinction between Gof and the behemoth, the mama and the behemoth. But what did Rab Zera say? Rab Zera says that it's the same thing. There's no difference between your Gof and your mama when there's a suffix Isser regarding your Gof. When there's a suffix Isser regarding your mama, he compared them. He said it's the same thing, just like he said regarding a Koi. Rabbi Eliezer says regarding the Koi that the hektish does not take effect, and it's the same thing regarding the Naziris, it doesn't take effect. So why over here, by the suffix B'chayris, all of a sudden do we say that there is a suffix and it's going to be Asr B'giza V'Avayda? That's the question. So the Gemara gives a simple answer. Amalei, so Rab Zera answers back to Abaye, what kind of question is this? Amaika Medamis, how could you compare Kedusha Haba Me'eleo L'Kedusha Haba B'dei Adam? How could you compare a Kedusha that comes through a person making this Kedusha, which is what Safik Naziris is? That here we have a question, when he said, I want to be a Nazir, and there's a Safik Naziris, he said it in a way that there's a Safik, does he mean, when he said his words, does he mean to include even a situation of a Safik or not? So it's a question about the das of the person. So over there, Rabbi Eliezer says that we're going to be lenient about that. But Kedusha Abba, L'kedusha haba b'dei adam. How could you compare kedusha haba me'eleh l'kedusha haba b'dei adam? But if it's a kedusha haba me'eleh, what's that? That's the b'chayr, a kedusha that comes min hashamayim. It has nothing to do with the person. So the fact that there's a suffix about this b'chayr from birth, if it's a b'chayr or not, so it's a suffix min hatayra b'negei to the status of this b'chayr. We have to be machmer and treat it like something which is hektish, and you're not allowed to shear the wall or do any work with it. So it's over here, it's nothing to do with the das of the person. So obviously over here, you're going to have to be machmer. So it's b'chlal, not a question. This answer of the Gemara is so simple that the Rashba actually says that this whole Gemara here is not the real question it wanted to ask, but it's just like sort of leading up to the next question. But it's very pashut. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Elo ikashya hokashya. If I have a question on Rab Zera, the question will be as follows. Safik mashkin litomei. If you have safik mashkin, and what's the safik? So you had the liquids, and the person which is tomei put his hand in that area where the liquids are, and it's not clear if his hands touched it or not. So there's a safik. Now litomei. If your safik is about the mashkin itself, whether it is tomei, so then tomei. Regarding such a safik, we're going to be stringent and say that it's tomei. But latame acherim, regarding this mashkin, that the mashkin, if it touches something else to make something else tamei, so then tahir. Then I'll say that it's going to be tahir. Again? So pashtus, the pshat over here, and what this Mishnah is saying is that the halacha regarding mashkin, we're going to assume now, the halacha regarding mashkin is that mashkin itself becomes tamei min hatayra. So if you have a suffix whether a person touched it or not, so it's a suffix min hatayra, so it's going to become tamei. But if now this mashkin touches something else, mashkin touching something else and making something else tamei is not a tamei min hatayra, it's only a tamei min drabanan. So therefore, if you have a suffix, it'll be tar. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion.
If the chatchila we know it's tamei, then it is tamei acherim.
Min drabanan, right. And Rabbi Lazar also said like Rab Meir. Okay, so Rabbi Lazar, before we will go to the Gemara Rabbi Eliezer, so some say you have to always be going to say Rabbi Lazar. Either way, it's the same Tana over here that we're discussing, Rabbi Lazar or Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer over here says that this suffix mashkin would, if it's regarding the mashkin itself, we're going to be machmer, that it's going to be asar. Now the question is, why is Rabbi Eliezer being machmer regarding this suffix mashkin? Is it true that Rabbi Eliezer would hold, if your suffix is about this mashkin itself, whether it became tummy or not, that we are going to be stringent and say that it's tummy? But Vatanya, we learned that Rabbi Eliezer holds as follows, and in this brayso we're going to see that Rabbi Eliezer holds that even the tumah of the mashkin itself is only a tumah midrabanan. Because Rabbi Eliezer said, "Ein tumah lemashkin kol ikar." There's no tumah minatayre to mashkin. It's all midrabanan. Teida, what the proof of this? So he brought a source from an earlier Tana that said, "Shaharei Heyid Yesi ben Yezer ish tzreida." Yesi ben Yezer ish tzreida said the following two halachas. Now the first halacha is not relevant for our sugya, but the two halachas he said was, one is al ayel kamtza dochin, one is regarding al ayel kamtza. Kamtza is a grasshopper, so it's a kind of grasshopper that it's tar, that it's permissible to eat. And also he said, Val mashkin, beis mit bachaya, all of the liquids, which means the bloods and all the different kinds of liquids that there are in the Beis HaMikdash, which is called a beis mit bachaya, the azara there where they shecht all the karbanas, doche. All those bloods are tahir. Why did Yesi ben Yezer say this? What was he saying? Because the bloods, which are liquids, are only tameh midarabana. Minatayra, there's no tumah. So in the Beis HaMikdash, they weren't geyser this tumah on these bloods because they didn't want there to be any tumah over there. So we see over here that Yosef ben Yezer said that even the tumah of the mashkin itself is only a tumah midrabanan. Okay, so now what do we see over here? So this is a stira in Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Before it said that Rabbi Eliezer says that when you have a suffix regarding the mashkin, so he holds like Rabbi Meir, there's going to be tumah. Why? What would be the reason we should be machmer? Only because it's a tumah minatayra. But now we see Rabbi Eliezer himself said in the name of Yosef ben Yezer that the tumah of mashkin is only midrabanan. Not only to be metama other things, but the mashkin itself is only tamim midrabanan. So why should you be machmer about this? That's the Gemara's question. Now, how is this connected to the Gemara before of Rab Zera? This is just a stira for itself over here in the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. This is coming in connection to what Rab Zera said before. So the Ran explains that if not for what it said before, then we would answer that maybe Rabbi Eliezer has a unique shitta. We always know the klal, Safik min HaTorah were machmer, and Safik min Rabbana were mekel. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer has a unique shitta, that even though the tumah of mashkin itself is only min Rabbanan, nevertheless, we're machmer. Even by a Safik min Rabbana, we're machmer. So that's how we would answer this. It's not a contradiction. He holds it's only Tommy min Rabbanan, but he's machmer. But what did Rab Zera say? Rab Zera says that when it says Safik Naziris lahakal, that when it comes to Naziris, which is a Isam min HaTorah, regarding a Isam and HaTorah of Naziris, he's Mekel. So if by a Isam and HaTorah he's Mekel, it's impossible to say that the same Rabbi Eliezer would hold regarding a Isam Midrabanan of Mashkin that he would be Machmer. That he's the one that's Machadish this idea that for Isam Midrabanan you're Machmer. How could it be? And now, go just one more point to explain here. The Ran says, even though the Gemara before explained that by Safik Naziris lahakol, there's a certain svara why dafke by Naziris he should be mekel, even though it's Isam and HaTorah, but there's a special svara to be mekel because when it comes to Naziris, it all depends on the das of the person. When he makes the Naziris, what was he thinking? Did he want to include this Safik or not? So maybe by Naziris we're mekel, even though by other Sveikis min HaTorah we're not mekel. But still, the Ran says it doesn't matter. Sof, to say such an extreme thing that over here on one hand he says that when it comes to Isam and HaTorah, yes, a Issa that's totally b'das b'nei Adam, but nevertheless a Isam and HaTorah, and he's mekel. And on the other hand, in the same Mishnah it says that Rabbi Eliezer says that a Safik b'negei to the mashkin, which is only a Safik midrabanan, that is machmer. That's very difficult. How could that be possible? That is the Gemara's question, and that is how it's related to what Rab Zera said before. Now the Gemara explains that this is not a question according to everybody, because Shmuel, this would be answered according to Shmuel, because the Amma Shmuel said when it says over there regarding the mashkin in the Beis Mitpachaya, the mashkin in the Beis HaMikdash, that it's dochin, that it's tahir, it just means milatame acherim, that the bloods, the liquid in the Beis HaMikdash are tameh of being mitame others. The mashkin itself will become tameh, because even minatayra becomes tameh, but it just won't be mitame others. Okay, so according to him, you can understand that this is a safik tumeh minatayra. So therefore, Rabbi Eliezer was machmeh here. Aval tumas atzman yeshben. So then, but their own tumah, it's a tumeh minatayra. So shapir. So it makes sense. That's what Rabbi Eliezer is machmeh. But according to Rav said the mashkin, according to Rabbi Eliezer, is completely tahir in the Beis Hamikdash because the entire tumah of mashkin, even for itself, is all midrabanan. How could you on one hand say that by a tumah midrabanan, he's saying that you're machmer, that this mashkin is tameh, and on the other hand, by the suffix nizirus, which is a suffix regarding ism and atayre, that is going to be mekel? So, because of this question, the Gemara gives a different answer. Elo, we're going to have to say, again, going back to the contradiction that we had at the beginning of the Gemara. Our Mishnah says, Stam Nedarim were machmer, and another Mishnah says that by Naziris, which is a type of Nedarim, we're mekel. How do we answer that contradiction? So the Gemara gives a different answer. Elo harab Yehuda v'harab Shimon. It's Tanaim that are arguing about this, and there's the Tanaim are Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. As we learned in the Braisa, the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Areini Nazir, a person says, I will be a Nazir, im yesh b'kri azeh meyakor. If in this pile of grain here, there's the amount of 100 kor. That was his condition he made. Now, v'halach, they went to this pile, they saw that it was stolen, or part of it was stolen, or got lost, so now they can't measure if there was 100 kor there or not. So now there's a suffix Naziris. Rabbi Yehuda mate, Rabbi Yehuda says, so the Naziris does not take effect. And Rabbi Shimon says, no, the suffix Naziris, it takes effect. So right over here, you have a clear machlokes. This is an example of a suffix Naziris. So Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says suffix Naziris lahakol, and the Mishnah by us that says stam nedarim lahachmer, we'll go according to Rabbi Shimon, that said over here, Rabbi Shimon Isa. So now the Gemara asks on this, but according to this, there will be a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda's own opinion. Because going back to our Mishnah, where it said, Stam Nedarim Lahachmer, in the end of the Mishnah, it brought up Rabbi Yehuda, Divrei, that Rabbi Yehuda agrees to this. Because me, Rabbi Yehuda, can you say that Rabbi Yehuda said, that when a person says something, he says, I'll be a nazir with a certain condition, and it turns out to be a suffix. So we say that because it's a suffix, he did not mean to include that in his naziris, and therefore it's going to be mutter. Is that true? But Veramini, I'll ask you from what it said in the end of our Mishnah before. Rabbi Yehuda says, Stam Trume bi Yehuda Asurin. Asura, that is. That if a person uses a language of Truma, he says this object should be Truma. So if he's in Yehuda, so then it's going to be Asur. Why in Yehuda is it going to be Asur? So if you remember what we learned in the Mishnah, because in Yehuda there's a suffix, whether he meant Truma Salishka, which is the Machzah Shekel, or he means Truma, but from the grain, from the produce in the field. And if it's Truma of Machzah Shekel, then that's a Dova HaNodar, and the Neder will take effect. If it's the Truma of the grain in the field, then it does not take effect. So in Yehuda we have that suffix, and therefore it's Asur. Ubegalil muteres, but in Galil it's going to be mutter. Why is that? Because the people in Galil, they're not accustomed with the machtas hashekel. So if a person uses the term truma in Galil, which is far from the Beis Hamikdash, we know he meant the truma in the field, and therefore that's not a dava hanoder, and the neder does not take effect. So now the Gemara is going to be medayik from the seif of this Mishnah. The reason why in Golem the truma does not take effect is the ein makirin, because there people don't know they're not accustomed with the machzas hashekel, so we don't have a suffix about what he said, so therefore the neder won't take effect. Ha makirin, but if in Golem people would know about the machzas hashekel, then asurin, then I would say that the neder does take effect. So what do I see over here? That from the seif of the Mishnah, the Gemara is being medayik. I see that Rabbi Yehuda holds in a situation where there's a suffix of a neder, we're machmer. So how could you say the same Rabbi Yehuda before said regarding the situation where there's a suffix of Nazirus, when he made a Nazirus, if this pile will have certain amount and now it's a suffix, that over there was Mekel. Now just Bavar and the Ran explains a simple thing here. Why did the Gemara have to make a dig from the seif of the Mishnah to ask this contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda? In the ratio of the Mishnah, what it says, in that stam trume bi Yehuda asurin, so he's saying pretty clearly that in Yehuda, when there's a stam and there's a suffix, it becomes asur. So the Gemara should have asked from that. So the Ran says the reason the Gemara didn't ask from that is because you would have answered regarding the ratio of the Mishnah that it's not a suffix. It's not a situation of a suffix. People that are in Yerushalayim, where there's machzas hashekel, they for sure mean the machzas hashekel. Over there, near the Beis Hamikdash, the term truma refers to the machzas hashekel. So that's not a question. But the question is from the diak of the Sefer, that we see that in a situation of a suffix, he's machmer. Like our Mishnah says, stam nedarim lahachmer. So how could the same Rabbi Yehuda hold regarding Nazirus that were mekel? What's the difference? So Rava answers, there's a difference between Nazirus and Nedarim. Why is that? Gabe Kiri, when it comes to this person that took upon himself to be a Nazir, and he made this condition, if this Kiri has a certain amount, so this is a suffix of Nazirus, Kosovar, he holds, Kol Shesfeike Chomer Mivadai, by Nazirus, as the Gemara will explain, it's going to come out that a suffix of a Nazir is going to actually be more stringent than a Vadai Nazir. So in such a case, Lo Ma'ayal Nafshe L'Sveika. So this person is not interested in having a suffix Nazirus upon him. Rather, we say that if he made this kind of a Nazirus with this condition, and now it's a suffix if his condition was fulfilled, his kavanah definitely was to be a Vadai Nazir and not to be a suffix Nazir, because then it would end up being harder for him. Why is that? Why is a suffix Nazirus more stringent? The Ilagabi Nazir Vadai, when it comes to a Nazir Vadai, Megaleach, so when the days of his Nazirus are up, so what does he do? He takes off his hair, or maybe carbon, he brings the carbon, or the carbonis that you have to bring, and v'nechal, and the carbonis could be eaten, and then that's it. His Nazirus is done. But al sveikai, what happens if you have a suffix Nazirus? Loimatzi megaleach, he can't do all of this. He can't take off this hair and then bring carbonis and end his Nazirus. Why? Because he doesn't even know if he's a Nazir or not. And if you're not sure, you can't bring a carbon of which is chulin into the Azara. So the suffix Nazirus, he can't end his Nazirus. So when did Rabbi Yehuda say that we're mekel is only by a suffix Nazirus? Because if you're going to say that he's not going to be a Vadai Nazir, what's going to end up happening is going to be a suffix Nazir. So that's actually going to be harder for him, worse for him. So over there, Rabbi Yehuda says that that we're going to be mekel, and we say that he didn't want to go into this whole suffix. Didn't want to go into the suffix Nazirus, and therefore he's going to be completely mutter. Again, so the point is not that he's going to be a Vadai Nazir, but actually it's going to be totally mutter. Masha'en came regarding a regular neder, when you have a suffix, what the person meant to say, over there we're going to say that we're going to be machmer.
And Rab Shimon would say that he has to be a carbon.
Well, Rab Shimon is going to answer him, but even according to Rab Shimon Oyser, he's going to end up being only a suffix Nazir. Even Rab Shimon that answers him is not saying he's going to become a Vadai Nazir. How could he become a Vadai Nazir? He made his Nazirus with a condition, and we can't determine if that condition was fulfilled or not. As it says, that kiri, that pile that he said, if it'll be the certain amount, you can't check it anymore. It was nigna, veineva, so he's only going to be a suffix Nazirus.
He remains a Nazir forever.
He remains a Nazir forever, correct? That's the point. So Rabbi Yehuda says, because if you're going to ask him, he's going to become a suffix Nazirus forever, over here we're mekel. That's why by Nazirus we're mekel. But by a regular neder, we're going to be machmer. So the Gemara now questions this, because this idea that he's going to remain a Nazir forever is not always true. So if a person says Hareini Nazir Olam, so if you use the term Nazir Olam, so what's the halacha? Over here, even if you'd be a Vadai Nazir, it's not more chomer than a suffix Nazirus. It's the same thing. So in such a case, you can't say that because the person didn't want to enter into this suffix Nazirus, which is going to be so difficult for him, to be a Nazir forever, so therefore, he probably didn't want to be a Nazir B'chlal, so it's going to be totally mutter. No, but if you use the term Hareini Nazir Olam, and he made the condition, and we don't know if that condition was fulfilled or not, whether he's a suffix Nazir, whether he's a Vadai Nazir, the Nazirus is going to be the same thing. It's not any harder to be suffix Nazir. So why in such a case would Rav Yehuda not say that he should be a Nazir? So you can't give me this answer. So the Gemara says, Amalei Nazir Olam. Actually, even when a person says, I'll be a Nazir forever, the suffix will still be harder for him. Sfeikei chomer mevadai. The suffix will still be more chomer than the vadai. Why? The ilu vadai, when a person is a vadai Nazir forever, the halacha is, hich b'tzayrai, if the hair becomes too heavy for him, mekel betar, he could lighten his hair with a razor, and umevi shalish behemis, and you bring 3 karbanis. So even by a Nazir Olam, if it's too heavy, that's part of it. You're allowed to lighten your hair. Hilus feikai, but however, a person that's a suffix Nazir doesn't have the option to do this, like we said before, because he can't bring the behemis into the Beis HaMikdash. It might be chulin, so it's still going to be something which is going to be harder for him, and therefore we say he will not become a suffix Nazir. It'll be mutter. So we could still say that Nazirus is different than a neder. But Gemara still asks. Gemara says, how about if the person said, Omar, Hareini Nazir Shimshin. Person says, I'll be a Nazir Shimshin. and he makes this condition, and now it's a suffix if the condition was fulfilled. But the point with Nazir Shimshon is, this halacha that we just said, that a person can lighten the heaviness of his hair and this whatever by a Nazir Olam, that doesn't apply by Nazir Shimshon. Shimshon was a Nazir forever with no heta whatsoever. So if a person said Nazir Shimshon, you can't tell me that being a suffix Nazir will be harder than being a Vadai Nazir, because over here, Nazir Shimshon is forever and ever. Amalei, so Rava answers and says, Nazir Shimshon Leitanya. We're not talking about a case of a person that said Nazir Shimshon. That's a very unique case. And this Brais was talking about a person that accepted upon himself Naziris, maybe even a Nazir Olam, but not Nazir Shimshon. That's a unique case. So that taka we're not talking about over here. In such a case, Rabbi Yehuda would agree that it would become Asr, because the suffix of Naziris is not any harder than the Vadei Naziris. But so he asks him, but we actually learned that this machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, whether the suffix Naziris will take effect or not, is even in a case where he said Nazir Shimshon. So Nazir Shimshon, there's no reason to say that the suffix shouldn't take effect. The suffix Naziris is not any harder than the Vadei Naziris. So Rava said, if so, Tanya. If you have a brayso that said so, no, so that's what the brayso says. So my answer is not a good answer. We can't make any distinction between the Nedarim and the Naziris. There's no reason to be more lenient regarding the Naziris, because suffix Naziris, Vadei Naziris, in the case of Nazir Shimshon is the same thing. So my answer is not a good answer. But Ravashi says the answer is still a good answer. Hahi Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rab Tarfon Hi. That brayso that you're telling me that says when a person makes a suffix Naziris, and he's talking about even a Nazir Shimshon, and the suffix Naziris is not any harder than the Vadei Naziris, and still it does not take effect, we're not machmeh for the suffix, that's Rab Tarfon. Rab Tarfon has a unique shit. What did the Tanya? We learned in Brayso, Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rab Tarfon Naim. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rab Tarfon. Ein echad mehem nazir. Now what is this Brayso speaking about? Two people are sitting, and somebody is walking towards them, and one says to his friend, if this person that's coming here is so-and-so, I'll be a nazir. Sorry, and his friend says, no, but if he's so-and-so, then I'll be a nazir. And then that person comes. So what does Rab Tarfon say? Even though the condition of one of them was fulfilled, because he turns out to be a certain individual, though, so one of them has to become a nazir. Says Rab Tarfon, ein echad mehem nazir. None of them become a nazir. Why not? The fish nitna naziris el lafla, because when the Torah says the acceptance of naziris, what's the lashon the Torah uses? Kiyafli. When a person has to say something that's explicit and clear. And over here, when a person says something with a condition and it's not clear while he's speaking whether the condition is going to be fulfilled or not, there's no naziris. Basically, Rab Tarfon says when it comes to the naziris, there's no such a thing of accepting naziris with a tanai. By a neder, you can make any tanai. By naziris, it's different. You can't accept naziris with a tanai because while you're saying it, it's unclear if the tanai will be fulfilled or not. So therefore, over here as well, regarding this person that made a tanai, if this pile of grain has this and this amount, so it's not going to take effect even if it ends up happening having that amount, because it's not clear while he's speaking. If that's the case that we're speaking, if that's the opinion that it goes according to, so why does the Brayso say, you know why he's not going to be a Nazir is because it was stolen from this pile or got lost, so we can't determine if his Tanai was fulfilled. According to Rab Tarfon, doesn't make a difference, even if you can see later the amount, but if while he's talking you don't know what the amount is, so it's not a flaw, it's not clear while he's talking, it shouldn't take effect. Why does the Brayso have to say? Only because you can't see. So the Gemara says the reason why it says that is Rab Shimon, because it's coming to say how far Rab Shimon goes with his Isser. Rab Shimon says that the Naziris does take effect, and he holds it takes effect not only if the pile is still there and it turns out that the T'nai was fulfilled, but the Afagav the Nigna V'Sha'avad, even if it got stolen or lost, Kesavar, Rab Shimon holds Ma'ayel Inish Nafsei L'Sveike, that a person will put himself into a suffix when he accepts upon himself the Naziris, and it's a suffix, so then the Naziris will take effect. So it's just coming to say the Chiddush according to Rab Shimon's opinion. But according to Rab Yehuda, that's following Rab Tarfon's opinion, no Naziris with a T'nai ever takes effect, because while he's talking, we don't know if it's a Naziris or not. Okay, one more piece of Gemara, going back to what it said in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda, we just quoted this before, that Stam Truma bi Yehuda, if a person uses the term Truma and is in Yehuda, which is near Yerushalayim, so then what's the halacha? It's a suffix. It's a suffix if he meant the Truma Salishka, which is going to be a good neder, because that's a dava hanodor, or if he meant the truma from the grain in the field, and that's not a good neder, so over there, the stam truma we're going to be machmeh, it's going to be truma. But then he said, but in Golil, stam truma is going to be mutter. Why? Because in Golil, the truma that a person is talking about is not the machzis shekel. He's not near the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so the Gemara is medayik. What does it say over there? So it says in Golil, they are not accustomed to dealing with the machzis shekel, and therefore the neder does not take effect. Ha makirin, but if in the Golil they would be knowing about machzis shekel, then asurin. Then because there's a doubt what the language of truma he says means, so it would be asur. So Alma, I see that what is he saying here? What does he hold? Sfeik l'chumra, like the entire Mishnah said. Anytime you have a suffix about a person's language in a neder, we're machmer. That's Rabbi Yehuda, what Rabbi Yehuda is saying here, like the whole Mishnah. Hey, Seifa, what does it say in the next case of the Mishnah? Stam charamim bi Yehuda. If a person is in Yehuda, he's in the area of Yerushalayim, and he uses the term chedem. This object should be chedem. What does the term chedem mean? So again, the Mishnah said that the term chedem could mean two things. The term chedem could mean something that you makdish to the Beis HaMikdash, the Bedek Abayis, and that's something which is asur, and it's a davar hanodar, the neder will take effect. Or if you say this object should be like chedem, maybe you meant the chedem that's given to kainim. Something that's given to Kainim is totally mutter. That has no isser on it. So maybe the neder should not take effect. So if it's in Yehuda, because they're in the place where there's a lot of Kainim, so there's a suffix what he meant. And if it's a suffix, here the Mishnah says mutarin, it'll be mutter. Ubegalil, but if it's in Galil, since in Galil they're not accustomed to dealing with all the Kainim, asurin. So over there when he said that this object should be Chedem, it'll be Aser. They're not accustomed with the Chedem that you give to Kainim, so the term Chedem means being makdish something to the Beis HaMikdash. So what do I see over here from the Sefer? Ha makirin mutarin. But if in the Galil they would be accustomed with Kainim, and now it's a suffix, what he meant to say with the term Chedem, when I have a suffix, what he meant to say, we're mekel, it's going to be mutter. So here I see that when the person says anything in a neder, and it's a suffix, whether he meant to asr or not, I say that you're going to be mekel. So we have a clear contradiction. Now again, the Ram points out over here, the Gemara is only asking this question by being medayik from the case of Galil. That if in the Galil there would be a suffix, so from Rabbi Yehuda I see that in a case of a suffix it would be aser, and from the next case regarding chedem I see that in a case of a suffix in Galil it would be mutter. But the Gemara does not ask the question from what it says clearly regarding Yehuda. In Yehuda it said that stam, first it says stam would be aser, and then it says stam would be mutter. Why doesn't the Gemara ask that? So the Ran again explains, because in Yehuda it would be possible to say that these l'shainis are not a suffix. When a person uses the term truma in Yehuda, he means machzis shekel because he's near the Beis HaMikdash. When he uses the term chedem, he means chedem for the kainim because he's accustomed with the kainim, and therefore it's going to be mutter. So the Gemara is only asking the question from Galil where there's a suffix, and I have here a stira. In a case of a suffix, is it going to be l'chumre or is it going to be l'kula? Abaye says that the last case is a different Tana. Sefer Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadiki. The Sefer that says that there's a suffix in what the person meant, and we're going to be mekel. This is a different Tana. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadik. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda said Stam Truma bi Yehuda Asura. When you have Stam Truma in Yehuda, so it's going to be Asur. And the reason why it's Asur is because in a case of a Stam, we're going to be Machmer, so it'll be Asur. But Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzaddik says, when is Stam going to be Aser? Only Stam Charamim Begalil. If it's in Galil, because in Galil they're not accustomed with Kainim, so there's no suffix about this. We know when he used the term Chedem, he meant to say the Chedem for the Beis HaMikdash. There's no Kainim there. And that's why Asurin. So what do you see from what Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzaddik is saying? When there's a suffix, it'll be mutter. The Ram points out, in this machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzaddik, there's really no reason why Rabbi Yehuda is saying his halacha specifically regarding Truma, and Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzaddik is saying his halacha specifically regarding Charamim. You can exchange them. They both could be speaking about either one. Each one must have heard from their Rebbe. He heard it regarding Truma, so he says Truma. He heard it regarding Chedem, so he says Chedem. But they're both talking about the same thing. Anytime there's a doubt whether he meant the Isser or not, I say that it's going to be Osir. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzaddik says if there's a doubt, it's going to be Mutter. The only time it's going to be Asr is in a situation where it's Stam Chedem and there's no Kainim around, then there's no doubts about this. Another interesting thing, just to finish off, that Ram points out, all of a sudden the Gemara here brings that there's a clear Machlokes Tanoim regarding a case of Stam by Nedarim, if we're machmer or we're mekel, going back all the way to the beginning, when the Gemara had a stir in the beginning. The Gemara said, V'hatan yisafik nazir, v'hatanan safik naziris lahakol. Our Mishnah says, well, machmer, and a broader Mishnah that says lahakol. You have an answer right over here. Right here, the Gemara is bringing you clear two Tanaim about this. Before the Gemara had a whole discussion who that is. So the answer is Enochanami. The Gemara could have brought this. The Gemara could have brought this answer. But the Gemara before, it's bringing other Tanaim that spoke clearly about Naziris. It said Safik Naziris Lahakal. It was trying to find, is there a Tana that said a clear halacha specifically regarding Naziris to be mekel? And that's why I tried to bring up Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yehuda, other Tanaim that spoke clearly about Naziris.